The Galactic Council's archive chamber was a sprawling, dimly lit vault filled with thousands of glowing data nodes, each containing centuries of information from across the cosmos. The air hummed with quiet energy as researchers flitted between terminals, their elongated fingers typing furiously on floating holographic displays. Among them was a scholar with shimmering violet skin and 6 delicate eyes that darted across the glowing symbols of the latest planetary survey. What started as a routine classification check had turned into something far more alarming. Breathing quickened as he ran the calculations again. His fingers trembled over the console. The numbers didn't lie. He turned to his colleague, a stout being from the system named Krell, who was deeply engrossed in his own research. Krell's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of a discovery too dreadful to ignore. I think we made a terrible mistake. Krell's 3 eye stacks swiveled in unison. What are you babbling about? He asked, lumbering toward station. Gestured at the display, pulling up comparative data of known planets so vast that only the most extreme life forms could thrive. The readings for volcanic eruptions, seismic instability, atmospheric toxicity, and apex predators scrolled rapidly before stopping at one name, Earth. This is wrong, Krell muttered, his thick claws tapping at the interface. Humans are part of the galactic community. They've been for decades now. Surely, this cannot be. But as he dug deeper, the reality set in. Earth's violent history flashed before them. The relentless hurricanes, bacteria, oceans filled with carnivorous creatures, land masses that tore themselves apart, an ascendant species that had survived it all, thrived even, and conquered the stars without genetic modifications or artificial enhancements. Krell's limbs locked in a defensive stance. We let them in. We let them into the council without realizing what they are. The weight of the revelation settled over them like a crushing gravity well. Didn't hesitate. He tapped his communicator, his voice barely steady. Administrator, we have an emergency. Minutes later, the council chamber erupted into chaos. Alien dignitaries of all shapes and sizes filled the West Hall, their voices clashing in panicked discourse. The central holographic display projected a simulation of Earth, its harsh climate and treacherous biosphere rotating slowly before them. Red warning markers indicated planetary disasters that should have wiped out dominant species multiple times over. And yet, humans had persisted. This is preposterous, bellowed a feathered diplomat, slamming his taloned hands on the table. How could our vetting process have failed so catastrophically? We've treated them as if they were a Category 2 civilization at best, screeched an amphibious representative from the Quell Dominion. By the stars, they're more dangerous than and we've been at war with them for centuries. Administrator, a towering Christian being whose luminescent core pulsed with agitation, silenced the room with a calculated wave of his limb. His deep, resonant voice cut through the noise. Enough. He turned to Krell, his eyes glowing with a mix of anger and fear. Explain this oversight. Swallowed hard. It appears that human adaptability has been severely underestimated. They evolved on a planet that should have eradicated them, yet they are among the most resilient species ever encountered. They possess no natural armor, no innate weapons beyond their intelligence and endurance, and yet they dominate through sheer persistence. They function at extreme temperatures, survive wounds that would kill most beings, and their bodies regenerate at rates unheard of in species of their classification. A nervous hush fell over the chamber. The implications were unthinkable. An diplomat clicked its mandibles in anxious thought. If they are this resilient, what happens when they turn their survival instincts against us? A low hum of unease spread through the council. The reality was setting in. They had welcomed a species of apex predators into their ranks without realizing it. The doors to the chamber hissed open, and all eyes turned as the lone Terran representative entered. Ambassador Elias Carter, a man of average height but with an unmistakable presence, walked calmly to his designated seat. His sharp eyes flicked over the panicked council members before settling on the massive projection of Earth spinning ominously above them. He let out a slow breath, then smirked. Well, he said, his voice casual but carrying a distinct weight. It seems you've finally figured it out. The silence was deafening. Christine's body dimmed slightly. Ambassador Carter, he began, his words measured, is it true? Are humans truly as formidable as this data suggests? Carter leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Depends on what you mean by formidable. We don't have the natural strength of the speed of the, or the intellect of the. But we don't stop. No matter the obstacle, we endure. He gestured toward the hologram. Everything you see there? That's our home. We were forged in fire, tempered by chaos. If you're only just realizing that now, he chuckled. Then I guess we really are as scary as you think. The council chamber fell into uneasy contemplation. The implications stretched beyond mere statistics. Humanity had not only survived but had integrated seamlessly into a galaxy unaware of its potential. The question now was not whether humanity belonged among them, but whether the galaxy itself was prepared for what that truly meant. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Holographic displays flickered erratically as panicked murmurs filled the air. Countless alien representatives debating, arguing, and even shouting over one another. The discovery that humanity hailed from a planet of extreme environmental hazards, hostile wildlife, and relentless survival pressures, had sent shockwaves through the assembly. Counselor, a towering, reptilian being with iridescent scales, slammed a closed fist onto the table. This is unacceptable. How did we not know this sooner? The Terrans have integrated into galactic society, and we were blind to the danger they posed. A pale, diplomat named, clicked their mandibles nervously. We must reconsider all diplomatic relations with them. If their physiology and psychology have been shaped by such a hostile environment, what does that mean for the rest of us? Could we truly trust them? Across the hall, another counselor, a luminous being known as, waved its tendrils to signal for attention. This is an overreaction. Humanity has been part of the galactic community for decades now. Have they not proven their ability to cooperate? Snarled. That was before we understood the implications of their origins. A species that evolved to fight for survival every day, when that sees pain and danger as merely an obstacle to overcome. How long before their instincts lead them to dominate rather than coexist? In the center of the hall, a lone figure remained composed. Ambassador Elaine Carter, humanity's representative, listened to the uproar with her hands folded neatly before her. Finally, when the voices grew too loud, she stood and activated the microphone embedded in her podium. Honorable Council members, I understand your concerns. But let me remind you that humanity has been part of this council for decades, not as conquerors, but as allies. The revelation of our nature does not change who we are. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. A representative of the Dominion flicked her tail in agitation. You ask us to believe that, despite being shaped by one of the most hostile environments in the galaxy, humanity does not pose a threat. Elaine met her gaze steadily. I ask you to judge us not by the nature of our world, but by our actions. Yes, Earth is dangerous. Yes, we are survivors. But what has that survival taught us? To cherish alliances. To value cooperation. We stand here today because we chose to reach beyond our world, not to conquer, but to connect. Leaned forward, his slitted eyes narrowing. And yet, your resilience makes you formidable. Your adaptability makes you unpredictable. If a war were to break out, how do we know humanity would not become the most dangerous force in the galaxy? Elaine exhaled, glancing at the shifting holograms that displayed Earth's landscapes, towering mountains, volatile storms, vast oceans teeming with life. Because our history has already answered that question. When we discovered spaceflight, we did not turn our ships into weapons of conquest. We turned them into vessels of exploration. When we encountered the unknown, we did not seek to dominate. We sought to understand. Our strength is not in our ability to wage war, but in our ability to endure, to adapt, and to grow alongside others. That is what defines us. A murmur rippled through the council chamber. Some representatives looked uncertain, others contemplative. Mandibles clicked once more. Then tell us, Ambassador Carter. If your people are truly, as you say, cooperative despite their origins, why is it that in every recorded conflict, humans have been known to fight beyond the limits of any other species? Elaine's expression remained calm, but there was an unmistakable glint in her eyes. Because when everything around you is trying to kill you, you learn not to give up. Another silence fell, but this time it was different. Not fear, not suspicion, respect. The council members exchanged glances, reconsidering their positions. Even, who had been the most vocal in his concerns, seemed thoughtful rather than hostile. Flicked her ears forward, a sign of acknowledgement. Perhaps we have underestimated what it means to be human. Elaine smiled slightly. Perhaps. But I assure you, we are not your enemies. We are your allies. And if there is one thing you should know about humans, it's that we protect those we call our own. With that, she deactivated her microphone and stepped back. The debate was far from over, but she had planted a seed of understanding. Now, it was up to the council to decide whether they would see humanity as a threat or as an asset. The Galactic Council chamber was in absolute chaos. Holographic screens flashed dire warnings in multiple alien languages, while representatives from dozens of species shouted over one another. The debate had reached a fever pitch ever since the revelation that humans were, in fact. The news had shaken the foundation of the Council's understanding of sentient species, and fear had spread like wildfire. Some called for immediate containment, others for negotiation, while a few, braver or perhaps more reckless, suggested observing the humans further to truly gauge the extent of their capabilities. At the center of the storm stood Counselor, a member of the Dominion, his bioluminescent tendrils quivering with agitation. We must act now, he bellowed, his voice echoing through the chamber. The humans have lived among us, hidden in plain sight, and we have treated them as if they were merely another species. But they are not. They come from a world of fire, poison, and relentless predation. They have evolved to survive in conditions that would kill any of us in mere moments. Across the hall, Counselor of the Coalition, a race of towering, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. And yet, despite their nature, they have not acted with hostility toward us. They have adhered to our laws, contributed to our trade, and even fought alongside us in past conflicts. Should we now turn on them out of fear? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement, others looked unconvinced. Ambassador James Carter, the sole human representative, remained seated at his assigned station, hands folded calmly before him. He had been silent throughout the proceedings, letting the aliens air their grievances and paranoia before he spoke. Now, with measured movement, he rose to his feet, clearing his throat. The room quieted almost instantly, all eyes turning toward him. Esteemed members of the council, he began, his voice steady. I understand your concerns. Learning that we originate from what you classify as A has clearly shaken you. But let me ask you this, what have we done to warrant your fear? Have we invaded your worlds? Have we turned our strength against you? Have we shown anything but a willingness to work alongside you? A silence fell upon the room. Evan hesitated, his tendrils curling inward slightly. Carter continued, his expression unwavering. Yes, Earth is a dangerous place. Our evolution has made us resilient, adaptive, and, when necessary, formidable. But those same traits make us excellent allies. We endure hardships and find solutions where others might falter. We do not seek conflict. We seek cooperation, understanding, and a place among the stars. Counselor, a member of the telepathic race, stepped forward, her silver eyes unreadable. But the potential for destruction is there, Ambassador Carter. We have seen your wars. Your history is full of conflict. How do we know that? When pushed, your people will not turn that strength against us. Carter met her gaze evenly. Because we already have the ability to do so, and yet we have not. Strength does not inherently mean aggression. The ability to cause harm does not necessitate the will to do so. Humanity is more than just its ability to fight. We create, we build, we explore, and we dream. Do not let fear cloud the reality of what we are. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, surprisingly, it was who moved first, clicking his mandibles once before addressing the assembly. The human speaks sense. Their nature may be fearsome, but so is their restraint. I say we judge them not by their biology, but by their actions. Slowly, others nodded in agreement. Even some of the more vocal critics hesitated, reconsidering their stance. Scowled but said nothing, clearly realizing he was losing ground. Carter exhaled quietly. The storm was not yet over, but the winds had shifted. Humanity's place in the galaxy hung in the balance, but for now, fear had not won the day. The Galactic Council chamber was in complete chaos. Holographic displays flickered erratically, reports from across the galaxy pouring in with alarming urgency. Every member of the council, from the towering reptilian to the gelatinous members of the collective, spoke over one another in frantic, overlapping conversations. Fear and disbelief radiated from every corner of the chamber. At the center, High Chancellor struck the podium with a heavy, clawed hand, sending a resonant boom through the air. "Silence," he bellowed. The noise dulled to anxious murmurs, and all eyes turned toward the central display where the latest footage of human activity looped. The screen showed a team of human explorers trudging through an environment classified as uninhabitable, their exposed skin weathering temperatures that should have turned them to ice. Another frame showed humans lifting objects that outclassed the strength capabilities of most known species. A final clip displayed a human soldier shrugging off a wound that should have been fatal. "We have been mistaken," continued, his tone laced with uncharacteristic unease. "Humans are not simply another sentient species. They are. There is classified as a Category 5 hazardous zone, and yet they thrive. We have underestimated them." A murmur rippled through the chamber, some voices raised in skepticism while others whispered their fears. Counselor, a representative of the, shook his head. "We have long suspected that their biology is unusual. But to claim that they are, that would mean we have allowed one of the most dangerous species in the known universe to spread unchecked among the stars." A holographic projection of Earth loomed overhead, with annotations detailing its extreme weather conditions, volatile geological activity, and highly aggressive native species. The more timid members of the council recoiled at the sight of it. Counselor, a being whose kind could not survive even minor infections, shuddered. "And yet they survived all this? Flourished? This defies logic." The doors to the chamber slid open, drawing all attention to the delegation of human representatives entering the room. Ambassador Evelyn Carter led the group, her steps measured and confident despite the obvious tension in the air. She approached the central podium and surveyed the sea of very alien faces. "I believe you have questions," she said evenly. Counselor, a skilled war strategist known for his tactical mind, leaned forward. "Explain to us, human, how your species thrives in conditions that would obliterate the rest of us. How is it that you endure environments labeled uninhabitable by every standard we know?" Evelyn met his gaze unflinchingly. "Because we had no other choice. Earth forced us to be resilient. Our ancestors learned to fight, to adapt, to survive in the face of relentless adversity. We evolved in a world that tried to kill us at every turn, and instead of perishing, we overcame." A heavy silence followed her words. Counselor, fur bristled. "And now you spread across the galaxy, bringing your nature with you. Should we be afraid?" Evelyn smiled, but there was no malice in it, only certainty. "That depends on you. Humanity has no interest in conquest. But we will defend ourselves. We will protect what we have built, and those who stand beside us." Counselor narrowed his reptilian eyes. And if we attempt to impose restrictions on human expansion? Evelyn's gaze hardened. Then we will prove just how stubborn we can be. The chamber fell into contemplative silence, each member absorbing the implications. Humans were not conquerors, but neither were they prey. They were survivors, and now the galaxy understood just what that meant.